Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Oh, it's December 15th. It's Monday morning, and we're ready to get going on what should be a week of celebrations and excitement here as we head toward the Christmas holiday, and we're right in the middle of the Hanukkah celebration. And yet we've got horrible news. Horrible things happened over the weekend in Sydney, Australia at Brown University, and then the news we're all waking up to, the murder of Rob Reiner and his wife in Hollywood. It's absolute devastating news to hear that the murderer appears to be Rob Reiner's son. Still delving into the details of that, and I don't know where to begin. Coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGenova will be here. At 8:05, we'll speak with Phil Wegman. He's the White House correspondent for Real Clear Politics. And then at 8:35, Chuck Thies will give us his analysis of the latest on the resignation of the D.C. police chief. And you know, trying to look on the bright side, we did have an amazing Army-Navy football game. The President, Secretary of War, and all of the brass there at the game. And it went down to the final play in the final minute of the game. 1-point victory for Navy. People thrilled about that, but then you've got the backdrop of, and then we also had Syrian soldiers, American soldiers murdered in Syria by an ISIS attack. Gosh, Julie Gunlock, just a horrific weekend. And we also have news about the Erica Kirk town hall that she gave with CBS, and now what appears to be some sort of momentum toward peace in the camp over there, and the factions coming out of Turning Point USA, where Candace Owens apparently is going to be meeting privately with Erica Kirk today and hopefully reach some sort of resolution so that whole thing can be put to rest. Where do we begin? Julie, good morning. How was your weekend?
Well, it was fine, but boy, what a terrible news week we've got here. My goodness.
Yeah. We've got a lot to clean up, and I think we'll start with the most shocking news, the murder of Rob Reiner. It was late last night when Fox News broke in with a report explaining that there had been police activity in a Brentwood home, and here's what it sounded like.
And good evening. I'm Trace Gallagher in Los Angeles. We have breaking news coming into the Fox News channel. You are looking live right there at Los Angeles. This is actually the Brentwood neighborhood of Los Angeles, where authorities are telling us a couple of hours ago they went into a home that is owned by the actor, producer, director, and political activist Rob Reiner. And inside that home, they found two dead bodies. One is a male, 78 years old. The other is a female, they tell us around 68 years old. Rob Reiner, we can tell you there has been no identification, but Rob Reiner is 78 years old. His wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, is around 68 years old. But again, the police have not given us any kind of identification. It is important to note that in the 2 hours that they have been in the house, that they found the bodies, there has been no word from anybody in the Reiner family at all. We know that robbery homicide for Los Angeles police were the first ones on scene. There were investigators also on scene, but again, the police have not given us any type of information except for the fact that they found two dead bodies in there. There has been no identification at all.
All right, that was the original report. Subsequently, and of course, people started to do the math and figured out that those two bodies and the ages of those two victims matched perfectly with Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle. Now it has been confirmed that they too are dead, and the suspect in custody now is their son, Nick, who apparently has struggled with a drug addiction since his early teen years, has been in and out of various rehabs since he was 15 years old. In fact, he wrote a semi-autobiographical screenplay, a movie called Being Charlie, that was put out in 2015, a film I'm not familiar with. His father directed it, and it drew on his own experiences with addiction and recovery. It's not literally autobiographical, but it is based on the experiences that he had. Just what a horrific story.
This is such a heartbreaking story. And I mean, I, of course, remember my parents were sort of big fans of All in the Family.
Oh, yeah,
And
mine too.
the first thing I said to you before we go on air during our sort of staff meeting was Meathead. I said,
Yes.
was this Meathead?
I said, yeah, Rob Reiner died.
Yeah.
The poor guy, he will never live to have that nickname.
Oh my gosh, my dad.
You mean Meathead? Yes,
my dad got such a kick. I can still remember some of the lines that were said on that. I mean, I was little, and my dad would laugh so hard. And Meathead was just such iconic character. And then I knew that he had gone on to be a director. And I knew, When Harry Met Sally. But then, as one does, you read the bios of these people. I did not know that he directed Princess Bride. I did not know that he directed one of my family's favorite movies, Misery, which we just watched last summer, and my children still talk about it. Anyway, so you just go through their bios, and I'm just stunned at all of the wonderful movies that he was behind.
Let me give you a string. Mark Hemingway, a friend of the program, Mark Hemingway, said that from 84 to 92, so this is what, a 7-year window. Listen to the films that Rob Reiner put out. This is Spinal Tap, was sort of his debut as a director. Then The Sure Thing, Stand By Me, Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, and A Few Good Men. That's just in that window.
It's so funny because I feel like Mark is one of these people. Mark Hemingway is one of these. He's very good on pop culture and music and entertainment. And, I feel like a lot of people our age sort of go, gosh, we grew up in this wonderful time of television and movies. Those are the kinds of movies we're talking about.
Yeah.
Not political, not like they're not slamming these sort of messages in your face, just really wonderful, in many cases, wholesome movies, but not necessarily wholesome. Some of them dealt with them, obviously. Misery was not. But great filmmaking, great filmmaking. You listen to that list of movies.
He was a great storyteller.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful storyteller. He did go on to do some more political. A Few Good Men breached into politics here and there, but not as much as some of his later films, including Dave, by the way, a great film about how Washington, D.C. works. You remember Kevin Kline playing the substitute president?
Yeah. I mean, When Harry Met Sally.
Because he was a lookalike. When Harry, there's so many iconic lines and scenes. No, that defined relationships in the late 80s.
Yes.
In the early 90s. No, I know. Speaking of which, now, have you gotten this confirmed about Billy Crystal?
No, I have not.
Have we seen that? One report says that it was Billy Crystal, the star of When Harry Met Sally, and sort of went on to star in many of Rob Reiner's films, ended up being the one who identified the bodies. Apparently they were neighbors in Brentwood. And we don't know a whole lot about his son Nick, other than he's done some interviews talking about his addiction problems, and it even led to homelessness for a good portion of his life.
People forget too that Rob Reiner was the son of Carl Reiner, who was also huge name in Hollywood, Emmy winner and
a
Grammy
groundbreaking
winner.
comedian, writer, director. He created the Dick Van Dyke Show.
That's right. So, from this very famous sort of, Hollywood family.
Uber achieving family.
Yes.
There's a lot to unpack there. A little bit more, and maybe some recollections about the laughter and joy that Rob Reiner brought to our lives through his art, through his comedy, through his talent. In a moment.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
They were reflecting a little bit on this horrific, tragic news that Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle. By the way, here's a trivia item for you. His wife, Michelle, was a famous photographer and did a lot of photography of celebrities. And get this. You know that iconic cover art of Donald Trump's book, The Art of the Deal?
Sure, yeah.
That shows Trump, in his prime there in the late 80s, with that sort of brown background. Everyone knows the cover of Art of the Deal. Michelle Reiner was the photographer.
That's crazy.
For that cover art for Donald Trump's Art of the Deal. Isn't that nuts?
Well, he's no fan of Trump, I'm sure.
No, he's been highly critical, obviously, of really all conservative politics. He very much embodied the very liberal character that he portrayed in All in the Family.
Another little piece of trivia here. And When Harry Met Sally, there is this iconic line of an older lady sitting in the deli going, "I'll have what she has." That was his mother.
Yes,
Carl Reiner's wife,
when
Estelle
Sally
Labost. Yes.
Sally pretends to have a climax there in the
Yes,
restaurant.
yes.
To
She goes, "I'll have what
demonstrate
she's having."
to
Yes.
Harry that a woman can fake it, and then
Thank you for explaining that
I'll
fully,
have what
Larry.
she's having.
All right.
Yes. It's a
Anyway.
great line. Well, and by the way, speaking of politics, if we can, because I think it should be noted that we can separate the man's art and genius and vision as a director,
Yes, unlike the
and
left.
actor, from his politics, and honor him for who he is. And I just want you to hear this too. Speaking of Rob Reiner, because and boy, talk about really giving perspective to people's humanity. Rob Reiner was murdered, it appears, by his 32-year-old son, who had an incredibly troubled and horrific life with addiction and homelessness and Lord knows what else that I'm sure we will uncover and learn. Now I want you to hear what Rob Reiner had to say upon the assassination of Charlie Kirk, who was basically his son's age. And knowing now the troubles that he had with his son at the exact same age, seeing what Charlie was able to accomplish and what he was able to do, living the life that he lived, and knowing, as Rob Reiner did at this moment, what his own son was going through, which eventually, months from this moment, would lead to his own tragic death. Listen to Rob Reiner's reaction to Charlie Kirk's death on the Piers Morgan Show.
When you first heard about the murder of Charlie Kirk, what was your immediate gut reaction to it?
Well, horror, absolute horror. And I unfortunately saw the video of it, and it's beyond belief what happened to him, and that should never happen to anybody. I don't care what your political beliefs are. That's not acceptable. That's not a solution to solving problems. And I felt like what his wife said at the service, at the memorial they had, was exactly right. And totally, I believe, I'm Jewish, but I believe in the teachings of Jesus, and I believe in doing to others, and I believe in forgiveness. And what she said to me was beautiful, and absolutely, she forgave his assassin. And I think that is admirable.
That's Rob Reiner, not a very short time ago, and now knowing the tragedy that he has suffered at the hands of his own son. By the way, a stabbing murder.
Oh, it's awful.
He and his
it's
wife
so awful.
had his own son, who is basically Charlie Kirk's age, and knowing while he's saying that about Charlie, and the horror that he felt at Charlie's murder, knowing the turmoil that he must have gone through over the past many decades with his own son, it really does sort of put things in perspective, doesn't it?
Well, it also makes you realize what a loss we have in this country, that obviously he died under horrific circumstances, but there are older liberals in this country, old school liberals who are still have remember to be civil and good, and remember that murder is not the answer. It is so sad to say that is a dying breed among liberals in this country. And just to hear the humanity and the kindness in his heart for Charlie Kirk and Charlie Kirk's family, and to know that actually, sadly, that is not the norm for liberals in this country who celebrated Charlie Kirk's murder. So
that's right.
His death is a tragedy, but it is also just sad to know that we are losing, he was 78. He had a lot of life left to live, but we have a generation that was much more civil about such things. And it breaks my heart.
Well, the thing about being a film director is that your life and legacy will live on. Your vision and your talent will live on. And I believe he's already finished the long-anticipated sequel to This Is Spinal Tap. This is Spinal Tap 2. I think the shooting is done. I think they were still in the process of editing it, and it turns out that will probably be his final film, which is sort of an amazing bookend if you think about his first film was This Is Spinal Tap. And one thing I'll tell you for sure, despite some outliers here and there of maybe anonymous accounts and some morons and yahoos, you're not going to hear anybody on the political right. And the conservatives are not going to be celebrating this moment. That's not how we roll. There's more to come, coming off of a pretty grim weekend in news, including the terror attacks at Brown University, the terror attacks in Sydney, Australia, and much more to come. Keep it here this morning. It's 5:23.
Terrible news out of Rhode Island this weekend. Multiple dead, several wounded after a mass shooting at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. We'll give you the latest. Keep it here. It's 5:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:37 on this Monday morning in your nation's capital. Thanks for being part of our program, O'Connor and Company. Thanks for letting us be a part of your morning. At 7:05, we'll bring Joe DeGeneva into the conversation. Then at 8:05, Phil Wegman, Real Clear Politics White House correspondent. Then 8:35 brings us Chuck Thies, D.C. political analyst. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
A grim weekend that we're trying to recap for you. We just gave you all the details that we have as of now about the horrific murder of Rob Reiner and his wife in their Brentwood home at the hands of their son, their troubled addict son, Nick. Now we turn to Brown University, which is part of the Ivy League, one of the more elite universities in America in Rhode Island. And a horrible shooting took place around 4 p.m. This was in the Barris Holly Engineering and Physics building. There was a final exam review going on for a Principles in Economics class. There were no professors in the room, although some have made note of the fact that the professor for this class and the room that was being utilized here was that of one Rachel Friedberg. She's a professor of economics at Brown University and is a identified Jewish woman and actually participates in many on-campus Jewish events, and et cetera. Some people make note of that, I think, because we've seen an uptick of violence against Jewish people, not just here in America, but sadly over the weekend worldwide, which we will be detailing for you as the morning goes on as well. It's also noteworthy because the shooter who walked into that room and shot 11, killing 2 and injuring 9, shouted something beforehand, and there's a lot of conflicting reports. Many of the victims who survived say they're not sure what he shouted, they couldn't remember what he shouted, and police have not confirmed what he shouted, but there are some suggestions that it may have been some sort of anti-Semitic or religious shout, like Allahu Akbar or something, but that hasn't been confirmed by anyone. We also know that one of the women murdered, a young 19-year-old, was the vice president of the Republican club on campus, and very religious Catholic woman. So her name is Ella Cook. Yes. Ella Cook, and at the Cathedral Church of the Advent in Birmingham, Alabama, the priest, there's video of the priest engaging in homily about her and just identifying her as the murder victim or one of the murder victims. There's also a lot of inquiry around the security on the campus. Apparently, a year or two ago, there were complaints from students about how many video surveillance cameras there were. It's been noted that Brown University is one of the most video surveilled campuses in America, and yet there is hardly any footage at all of the assailant. By the way, let me just, I'm burying the lead here. The gunman is still at large. Yesterday, they had detained somebody. A reporter had asked the police chief about the person that was in custody, and notably, a individual from the department, or perhaps from the DA's office, leaned in, and you could hear him say on microphone, whispering into the police chief's ear, "Custody is not the right word." And the police chief corrected and said, "We have detained an individual of interest," but as of last night, that person had been released. And the only camera footage that we can see is a person dressed in black from head to toe, indicative of the outfits worn by Antifa thugs, but not necessarily, listen, you want to go you shoot up a classroom and then get away with it. You're going to dress all in black head to toe, I suppose, if you don't want to be noticed or identified. But that's the only camera footage we have is this individual walking away from the camera. There's nothing that shows his face.
Yeah, the Providence police were totally confusing, apparently, on this. And I also find it weird that the Providence police say he appeared to be in his 30s, dressed head to toe in all black. They know nothing, but how do you know his age?
How do you know his age? Right.
I mean, you have almost no surveillance information on this guy, and yet you say he's in his mid-30s. Okay, dressed all in black. How do you know that? Anyway, the police were very confusing. The university staff, the university president would not release information. And as far as that shouting Allah Akbar, which some of the witnesses have said they heard, no certainty on that. There just seems to be a big mystery surrounding this Brown University shooting. So lots of questions remain.
Yeah. Also, a lot of questions remain for sure. And also, oftentimes, whether it's a high school campus or a college campus, when there's a mass shooting event like this with, 11 people shot in a classroom, oftentimes the MO of the shooter is that this is just going to be, one final burst of glory and then death by suicide. At the hands of police officers who are coming to intervene and stuff. That doesn't seem to be the situation here. This person apparently purposely dressed to not be identified, and he very casually sauntered away. It's not like he was trying to shoot as many people as he possibly could. He appears to have targeted this classroom, shot at the people in that classroom, and that was the end of it. And then he walked away and is terrifyingly still at large. And yes, there are 800 cameras on this campus. It's been noted that it's, something like one camera per 16 students. And I want to remind you that there literally were articles by Brown University students complaining, feeling like they were constantly under surveillance because of all the cameras. And yet with all of those cameras, this one shot we have is him on the sidewalk outside the building, just sauntering away.
Very
horrific.
Strange.
Absolutely horrific. It's 5:43.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Listen, this is O'Connor and Company on WMAL in Washington, D.C., and when a story like this murder of 2 students and injury of 9 students at the hands of a gunman who is still at large at Brown University has inexplicable intersections with news and politics, we have to raise that issue. We're not trying to politicize stories that don't deserve to be politicized. But there's some things that you just can't overlook, especially the fact that one of the victims, this young woman, was a conservative Republican activist on campus. And Julie, you've now said that she had some involvement with a tour of G. Van Fleet from Loudoun County here, an outspoken anti-communist Republican woman. And apparently when she was on campus at Brown, she met with this victim.
Yeah, so G. Van Fleet is just tweeting. She tweeted this weekend, "I have just learned with profound shock and horror that one of the victims of the Brown University shooting was Ella Cook. I met Ella this past April at a lunch at Brown Faculty Club following a campus tour before a book talk that evening. Even in that brief time, she made a lasting impression. Ella was a lovely, kind, and exceptionally bright young woman who served as vice president of the Republican Club. We spoke about what it was like to be a conservative on campus, current events, and the history of communism." And G goes on to say Ella was a sophomore from Birmingham, Alabama. She was killed while attending a review session for an economics class. This is G. Van Fleet, obviously a leader for reform in Loudoun County, and she includes a picture, and one of the women I work with at the Independent Women's Network, Gita, is also there sitting next to Ella. So this is very sad. Obviously, this young woman was a leader on her campus and really sort of, dialed in to some of the activists around the country, meeting with Xi and others. What a tragedy. But it is important to say she was a very active, it looks like a very active Republican on
very
campus.
high
And
profile,
she is one of the
active
two
Republican
that was killed.
Yes, she was one of the two that was killed, and she was a very high profile, active conservative on campus. And then there's this story. You might remember in March of this year, Brown University student Alex Shea, who was the president of the Republican Club, sent out a mass email to 3,800 non-faculty staff members at at Brown, and he was reflecting the Doge initiative led by Elon Musk and the Trump administration. The email asked all of these non-faculty staff members to describe what tasks you performed this week, aiming to investigate administrative bloat and rising tuition costs. Tuition at Brown, by the way, is upwards to $95,000 a year. The sophomore and a student journalist reviving the conservative Brown Spectator. The Brown Spectator was the conservative newspaper on campus.
Yep.
It had been defunct. Alex Shea revived it. Brown University launched an investigation and full disciplinary charges against him. Yes, for improper access to non-public data, misrepresentation, causing emotional harm to the staff.
Are you kidding?
Elon Musk drew attention to this on his X feed. Eventually, the student by May was cleared of all charges at a disciplinary hearing. He faced no punishment. He subsequently dropped out of Brown and testified in a House hearing about...
Yeah, you can imagine how nice his professors were to him after he did that.
He left. He testified in front of a House committee on extravagant costs at college universities. But then get this, one of the few students who spoke out in his behalf, Ella Cook.
That's
this
right.
young 19-year-old woman who was murdered.
Yeah, I want to say
shooting.
something also. You said we didn't want to politicize this. We weren't the first. We're not doing that. We're not the first to do that. You know who did it? The mayor of Providence, who said in a press conference, he's talking about the death of these students and this shooting and this horror on his campus.
Yeah.
And he says that you shouldn't trust the news. You should only trust the official Providence sources because the president of the United States spreads misinformation. Can you imagine getting up there after the horror in your town and using it as an opportunity to take a swipe at the president?
Julie, I wish that was the only example of this. And you're right. We don't like to politicize these things. But let's hand it off to Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, who was on State of the Union with Dana Bash at CNN. And, of course, Dana Bash gave him a beautiful assist in this endeavor to make this shooting at Brown University about Donald Trump.
Not shocking, because over the last year, President Trump has been engaged in a dizzying campaign to increase violence in this country. He is restoring gun rights to felons and people who have lost their ability to buy guns. He eliminated the White House Office of Gun Violence Protection, and he has stopped funding mental health grants and community anti-gun violence grants that Republicans and Democrats supported in that 2022 bill. So he has been engaged in a pretty deliberate campaign to try to make violence more likely in this country. And I think you're unfortunately going to see the results of that on the streets of America.
That's a pretty big statement. He's in a campaign to make violence more likely?
Of course. I mean, he's knowingly restoring gun rights to dangerous people. He is cutting off grants that have bipartisan support to try to interrupt violence in our cities or to try to get necessary mental health resources to families and children in need.
Senator Chris Murphy, that's what you call politicizing. But again, the suspect's still at large. We know nothing about them. And Rhode Island, by the way, has some of the strictest gun control laws in America.
Yeah, it was a gun-free zone. Let's not forget.
Absolutely gun-free zone. It is 5:53.